The arsonist was denied a bank loan. Ow now, brown cow. Ow now, brown cow. Welcome back to the Redraft Show, brought to you by the FF Dynasty and the FFD Fantasy. I am the one that they call Chev GPT, and to my right is my illustrious co-host, the one that they call Coach, otherwise known as Jeremiah, a popular name in the 2026 and 2027 draft streets. Coach, we're here today to talk about some tight ends, but before we get into that, how are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm real happy. It sounds like we're getting a better relieved news about Ashton Jeanty. So prayer circles out there, the prayer circles are working. And now there's prayer circles for Travion Henderson. Can we just get to the season? And part of getting to the season, Chev, is these tight ends, the tightest of ends that we are interested in redraft, 20 all the way down to 1. Let's start off at the top. In our consensus ranks, Chev, tight end 20 through 17, Mark Andrews, Brenton Strange, Chigakonkwo, Hunter Henry. Who stands out for you in that patch?
The safest of this whole bunch is probably going to be Hunter Henry. 84 targets last year, finished as a tight end 9 in PPR, and I believe the tight end 7 in half PPR. So to me, it's just a bet that he's going to continue down this path. And you know, they drafted Eli Raridon in the 3rd round, I believe. And he is a complete tight end. He does have the athletic profile. He is probably the future at the position, to be totally honest with you. But on the same side, Hunter Henry, look, is just old, reliable, 7 touchdowns last year. Drake May took a step forward. Hunter Henry's production took a step forward. 60 catches for 768 yards, 7 touchdowns. I expect the touchdowns number to probably stay the same or potentially go up with the addition of A.J. Brown and Romeo Doubs. This is just going to be kind of a forgotten man that you look up. And for years, we talked about Hunter Henry giving us those tremendous spike weeks and then just disappearing into the ether. Now we have a stable offensive environment where he could just maybe consistently give us those tight end 1 performances. So he might actually be mispriced at our tight end 17 ADP. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like the logic there too. And we had talked pre-NFL draft about, hey, can we get a Justin Jolie over there? It ends up being somebody like Eli Raridon, but the play remained. Get somebody who can be under the tutelage of Hunter Henry, develop, gain another weapon for the New England Patriots and Drake May. Then, of course, the NFL theme is adding to the tight end rooms, 12 and 13 personnel, all the rage. We've seen the Rams out of 13 personnel last year, 20 touchdowns, 0 interceptions from Matthew Stafford. So the trend is your friend in the NFL, and especially if some of the better coaching staffs are utilizing that, some of the better offenses are doing that. It's just rapid fire around the NFL. So I like your play there with Hunter Henry. The dopamine hit from clicking him isn't quite there because you don't think you're getting maybe a spike week player a la somebody Bowers, Loveland, Pitts, any kind of name where you think, oh, this guy is going to be in the top 5, in the top 3, possibly the tight end 1 overall. You don't get that quite with somebody like a Hunter Henry. The guy who stands out for me, though, Chev, in that clump that we just mentioned is Brenton Strange. Strangely enough, I have him as tight end 12. For me, yards per route run, he was 8th, 1.81. In 6th in yards per target last year at 9. Yards per reception, 9th was Brenton Strange at 11.7. In first downs per route run, 10th at 0.09. So those aren't necessarily elite stats, but they put him in that threshold of maybe he can be a middling tight end 1 in the NFL next year. And down the stretch, the last 6 games, he had, Brenton Strange, 10 red zone targets. I love that stat. And for me, those are little stats that pop up that remind me of a lesser grade, Colston Loveland, the lesser grade Tucker Kraft. So when we talk about ceiling plays in that clump, who could get up there between Hunter Henry and Brenton Strange? For me, it's going to be Brenton Strange. What do you make of that?
Oh, yeah, I disagree with everything you just said because I'm Team Parker Washington. But I do see the path to what you're saying. I just choose not to walk that path. I do agree. I do think, I mean, from a dynasty, I was during the season last year, I was all over that. Hey, let's go buy some Brenton Strange. He's a plus athlete. Now he's been extended, so we're now walking down a path of where he's a part of the team's future plans. They did draft Nate Borkacher, or however you say that, and Tanner Koziol in the 7th round, but they extended him, and he's 26 years old. He's just entering his grown man body as a tight end. So there's a path that you're walking down there that I like. I don't like it for redraft, though, if that makes sense.
The one part that I will say, and we've talked about this in prior conversations, Chev, is how many times we've had takes and we've been directionally correct, but we're just kind of off just a little bit. So my contention is, if the entire, and God knows this happens every year, Chev, the fantasy football industry, and that can be us collective, we're wrong about things every year. And it's like, oh, what did we get wrong as a fantasy unit? Well, Parker Washington's ceiling could end up being one of those. I have him right around 36, 37 at that turn pick. So I have Parker Washington bullish very high as well. So if he doesn't hit Parker Washington, I'm going to be part of the wrong crowd. In the event that there is some wrongness there, to me, I think the beneficiary would be somebody like a Brenton Strange. Now, speaking of tiers for fears, tight end 16 and 15, keep it in Texas. Dalton Schultz, Jake Ferguson. Tight end 15 is Ferguson, and Schultz is 16. Last year, Ferguson, 102 targets, was 7th in the NFL for tight ends, for targets. Dalton Schultz, 106. He was number 6. Dalton Schultz had one less target than Harold Fannin Jr. last year, and he had one more game played. So Fannin would clear. He still clears. But you just see there's just easy targets, gettable, attainable targets. And now, Chev, Jaden Higgins, hurt, torn ACL. We have the Kayshon Boutte trade. But I would still say ladder at the top 2 targets, which is something you want for a tight end. Nico Collins, it's setting up for Dalton Schultz to be the number 2 target there. And then the Cowboys, who could throw 550 to 600 times, Jake Ferguson abounds, where we've talked about Lamb and Pickens, how high they can be. What do you make of, if you're on the clock, Chev, who do you prefer with Schultz or Ferguson, who may get peppered with targets this year?
Right now, it's got to be Dalton Schultz because George Pickens and CeeDee Lamb are healthy. If one of those guys goes out, then Jake Ferguson immediately becomes a weekly top 5, top 6 tight end just because his target volume stabilizes. I mean, last year he had 82 catches. He's not going to do much after the catch, but I mean, we're 2 seasons removed. Well, the addition of George Pickens removed from him leading basically the NFL or amongst all tight ends in red zone targets, or end zone targets. So there's a role here. They've paid him. He's a part of the plan. He's Dak Prescott's safety blanket. But when you have such nuclear weapons at the wide receiver position, it's really hard to create a path for for Jake Ferguson to command those targets. So Dalton Schultz, for me, the number 2 targets in the offense right now. Now, the Patriots traded Kayshon Boutte to the Houston Texans today as we're recording this. So that we'll see how if that negatively impacts Dalton Schultz, but it just seems like he's the safety blanket, the check down guy, the easy button that CJ Stroud sometimes finds. And it's clearly a part in the design of the offense. So I'd have to go Dalton Schultz here just because for the safety. The upside swing is betting on Jake Ferguson to be the beneficiary of one of the stud wide receivers missing time.
Yeah, it's funny enough when it's 2 primary targets and Schultz is one of them with the Texans versus Ferguson being the 3rd target pecking order in the Cowboys offense. It's almost even where, okay, you give one edge to somebody like Schultz, but it's very close, and then it would get overtaken by Ferguson in the event as to what you spoke to if Lamb were to miss time or Pickens miss time. Right now, respectively, I have Schultz 15, Ferguson 16. When I think of ceiling, Ferguson's the path to play. When I think of more surety, it's going to be like somebody of a Dalton Schultz. So fun little exercise there when you're on the clock. If you've run through the gamut of the elite tight ends, you can surely do worse than Jake Ferguson and Dalton Schultz. Now let's go over to some people who have gained plenty of steam, and we're not talking about Cleveland. Juwan Johnson, tight end 14. Dallas Goedert, tight end 13. All the way to Isaiah Likely, tight end 12. We have a new team for Likely, and he follows Jonathan Harbaugh. Dallas Goedert ran hot last year on touchdowns, gets continuity with Jalen Hurts. It sounds like Eli Chev is struggling. But then Juwan Johnson, you have, I think Oscar Delp just picked up a hamstring injury. Then you have Jordan Tyson, who's going to be on the mend for possibly the first month, maybe the first half of the NFL season. Chev, who stands out the most for you to really pop? Who has ceiling that you want from likely 12, Goddard 13, and Juwan Johnson, who we have at 14?
It's Juwan Johnson for me. I've been a Juwan Johnson guy just since randomly I just was like, man, who is this? That's what happened to that receiver from Oregon and Jameis Winston randomly threw him 2 touchdowns in a game early in his Saints career, in his Saints tenure. And so now him finally getting the volume, him not having to deal with Taysom Hill just doing all the weird gadgety stuff. We get a career high in targets. We get a career high in receptions, a career high in yards, and we only get 3 touchdowns. That's the rub. If we're talking 6, 7, 8 touchdowns, who are we going to target in the red zone more often with no Jordan Tyson, with Alvin Kamara on the shelf? Maybe you target Travis Etienne a little bit more, but I would be willing to bet that this is the number 2 guy in the offense. So for me, it's going to be Juwan Johnson out of this cohort that we just discussed of the Dallas Goederts and the Isaiah Likeleys. But I am excited about both of those guys because there's clear runways for true breakout ceiling. But Juwan Johnson's a little bit safer, and we can comfortably say that he's going to be the number 2 in that offense until Jordan Tyson comes back, and he's out for at least 2 months, as they said.
I like what you said about that. And to just dive further into, because you covered Juwan Johnson very well, the one issue I have with Dallas Goedert, and people are like, oh my God, this guy is such a great value. Here's my problem. Here's his touchdown total from 2018 to 2024. Dallas Goedert, 4, 5, 3, 4, 3, 3, 2. Then last year, hits 11 touchdowns. 11 touchdowns. Touchdown output helps tight ends so much. And we'll talk about that with Travis Kelce in a bit, little teaser there. But Dallas Goedert, I know the Eagles, I like the way they utilized that shovel pass last year. Mm-hmm. And in and tight, like, hey, NFL, don't vote against the tush push. We'll do something different just for a little bit. And they would give a couple touchdowns in tight to Dallas Goedert. Now, we've seen that a little bit with Travis Kelce, somewhat of a copycat league. So there's some possible safety in somebody like Dallas Goedert. But back to our conversation about upside safety, I would like that click on somebody like Juwan Johnson. And I'd like to buy into Isaiah Likely. My problem is, I've talked about it all off season, 20 to 20, it's going to be difficult to get there to the red zone, to the green zone. But the Giants should not be stoppable. When you think of the RPO with Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, throwing the ball up to Malik Neighbors and Malachi Fields, and then across the middle, a combination of any of Isaiah Likely or Theo Johnson, I don't know how you stop that. But the problem is, I don't think there's going to be enough touchdown share to go around for Isaiah Likely. So I like where your head's at on Juwan Johnson. Let's shift over, Chev. 2 Old Faithful tight ends. Tight end 11 in our consensus gathered rankings. George Kittle, Travis Kelce, tight end 10. Who do you got and who do you love?
Who do you love? Shout out to YG. We talk about ceiling versus safety. It's old busted. It's Travis Kelce going into his age 37 season, and George Kittle coming off an Achilles who's just activated off the pup. And I think that I'm gonna go back to the well, and I'm gonna go with George Kittle. George Kittle was almost a bring home the bacon guy for me last year. I at the last minute, I was like, nah, we're going. It's in my heart. Tucker Kraft is in my heart, and that's what I'm going to go with. So Freight Train Tuck took it. But I believe that there's going to be just a free reign, a free roam for George Kittle to run and roam free over the middle of the field if we can keep some of those 49ers receivers healthy. If the substation is just not out there claiming soft tissue on every single pass catcher for the 49ers, then I think George Kittle can operate with some autonomy. He's the only tight end ever to have 2 1,000-yard seasons or one 1,000 yard season without eclipsing 100 targets. So the upside to me is just tantalizing. I mean, this is a guy that we were taking at tight end 3 to tight end 5 last year. Just the Achilles has given us a discount. And I mean, I don't know if he has Wolverine healing powers, but I am betting on George Kittle to definitely return on value, especially if where you're able to get him, if you take a tight end earlier, like say you take a guy like an Isaiah Likely a little bit earlier, and then you come back in the late rounds, you punted tight end, you take George Kittle. This is a build that I really like because you get to, if it comes to fruition, you've got two studs that I think could put up flex-worthy points, like greater than 12 points a game or 13 points a game in PPR. So that's flex-worthy anytime. So, yeah, it's going to be George Kittle for me.
George Kittle perpetually lives anywhere from tight end 2 to tight end 6 fantasy points per game. He's got like 7 or 8 seasons just littered out there where George Kittle is always up in the highest end of fantasy points per game. It's just a matter of, Chev, is he on the field? And as you alluded to and spoke so well about, hey, that substation, can we avoid it a little bit? Can there be some like reverse, some canceling out? You remember in math, it'd be like 2 negatives multiplied, make a positive. Can we get something there for the 49ers on that injury track? For the Travis Kelce angle, we talked pre-show, 117 fantasy points last year. I contend that with 5 touchdowns last year, Travis Kelce, 108 targets, ranked 4th. If you just double the touchdown output, that's 30 more points. That would have put him above Kyle Pitts, who scored 122 points, and would be second only to Trey McBride, who scored near 190 fantasy points last year. So just think about that when you're doing your tabulating and your thought process. We have Kelce here ranked 10th. You and I both lockstep, but there's more to be had where he could be easily a top 5 tight end this year, top 3. And to what I just spoke to, he was just missing from that touchdown output, how it does benefit. And we could say the same credit to every other tight end, granted. But with Travis Kelce, we've seen it before. Eric Bieniemy comes back. I just have some optimism that we can get one more high-end season, and it can be a little bit of a scam because, yeah, you're drawing touchdowns. But part of that is still skill that we can't take away entirely from a Hall of Famer. And George Kittle, I think, do you think he's a Hall of Famer too, Chev?
It's funny. I was having this conversation at work with someone, and I was like, you got to be serious with yourself about this. He's one of the best blocking tight ends. He's been the best blocking tight end since Gronk retired. And I think he's the single season record holder for yards by a tight end in a season. In addition to the things that I said earlier about him being the only tight end to eclipse 1,000 yards on less than 100 targets. Yep. How could you keep him out of the Hall of Fame? Like, I feel like he's the mascot for the tight end position, and he's not this big, brawny, burly guy. It's just, I mean, he's about 245 pounds, and he is just a football savant that understands angles and willing to just be really, really physical and be willing to knock your face off any single time that he makes contact with somebody in the run game. So you have this unicorn pass catching utility combined with the ability to change the math in the run game. So yeah, I think I know Travis Kelce is a bona fide first ballot Hall of Famer, but I think George Kittle is in that same pantheon just for what he's able to do as a complete tight end.
Travis Etienne Kelce is a tight end, Hall of Famer, and George Kittle, we think he's a tight end, Hall of Fame tight end. The only thing I would just wonder, maybe if there was a little bit more shine from a victory of a Super Bowl. It's funny how that works out for some players where they're more in the spotlight and they're thought in that forefront. So 2 Hall of Famers, Kelce, Kittle, book it, mark it down. Let's go to Dalton Kincaid next. He's the tight end 9 in our ranks. Chev, I know you've talked highly of him, so I'm going to give you the floor. I got a lot of stats in here, but you got a lot of good. Every time you talk about Dalton Kincaid, it makes me feel better about the shares I have in Dynasty. Makes me feel better about clicking him in Best Ball and now in Redraft. Tell us why we should be clicking Dalton Kincaid.
So the team wants him to be a large part of what they're doing. I mean, 44% route participation as he was managing the PCL, and all he did was manage to be the only tight end to go over 3 yards per route run, 27% targets per route run. That's outstanding. And on top of that, I mean, we're looking at the yards per target being tops in the league, the yards after the catch being sixth in the league amongst tight ends. You know, he was managing this injury and still going out there and performing at a high level. So all we need is just the full-time route share now. That's all that we're missing. We've seen the efficiency. We've seen what it looks like with the offense functioning using him. They add DJ Moore to give them another element. Dalton Kincaid is going to be their de facto mismatch. What they hoped Keon Coleman could do for the offense, that's exactly what you're going to get from Dalton Kincaid. While you have DJ Moore and Khalil Shakir, DJ Moore winning in various methods, Khalil Shakir generating a just an absurd amount of yak. But you now have a complete room because you added a real adult in DJ Moore, who I think is going to have a great season also. But we have the path to him being the second leading target getter, or possibly, potentially, maybe the number one in the offense. Remember, the GM that took him in the first round is still there. Joe Brady, who just utilized him in a tremendous manner, is still there in limited snaps. And on top of that, Pete Carmichael, the new offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, was a part of those New Orleans Saints offenses with the Jimmy Grahams of the world. And then later on, they evolve and they utilize Taysom Hill in that manner. And he was the offensive coordinator when Juwan Johnson caught the 7 touchdowns as a second-year player. So the path here to me is clear. And I like making these types of bets because it's a good player and a good offense with great draft capital, who is the only thing that changed is that he just wasn't healthy. So if Dalton Kincaid stays healthy, this is my guy this year. This is who I am planting my flag on. This is the bring home the bacon guy for me this year, Dalton Kincaid.
It's just like that meme. It reminds me of the guy who's mining for diamonds, and he turns around just at the last second before hitting. And I just think everything you're saying, it just reminds me of that. Like, hey, this is the year. He'll be age 27, Dalton Kincaid, this year. If he hits in a big way, like you say, top 5 and higher, we're talking about this is a fortress tight end that you want for the rest in perpetuity. And hopefully you have him. So it's funny how on one side you don't see it, but on the other side it's so vivid. And of course, hindsight bias 2020. But first in first downs per route run, yards per route run, target premium, number 1 in yards per target, second in yards per reception. So a lot of 1s and 2s all across his name. But to your point, can he be healthy? Can he play the entirety of snaps? Can he get all the work in the tight end room and be a top target in this Bills offense, really be what he was drafted for? It wouldn't be crazy that he's a couple of years into his career where, hey, tight ends, they age a little bit more like wine, where it's a little slower, but when it's right, it is awesome. So let's go to another tier, and this is kind of a good pack together that I like to discuss. Kyle Pitts, tight end 8, Chev. Harold Fannin Jr., 7. Sam LaPorta, 6. I know you're in on LaPorta this year, Big, but you're a Harold Fannin Jr. truther. So how do you equivocate these 3 in this range?
It's just so much better of an environment that Sam LaPorta has as opposed to the other 2. The ceiling is the highest for Harold Fannin just because he's one of the 9 tight ends since 2000. Well, Sam LaPorta is too, ironically enough. But we had Harold Fannin go absolutely nuclear as, in the most untenable environment known to mankind last year. I mean, this is with Dylan Gabriel. This is with Shedeur Sanders. This is with all these guys coming out and just attempting to play quarterback and looking like Brucey from The Longest Yard at different points. So the ceiling is for sure with Harold Fannin to me, but the safety and the combination of safety and ceiling for Sam LaPorta is just too much for me to pass up. And that's not to say that Kyle Pitts can't come out and catch his 6 touchdowns. I mean, we're just moving up like the yodeler dude from The Price is Right. It's 6 touchdowns this year. So I like all of these. I like the prices that they're at. It's just that I can somewhat predict that LaPorta is going to be the number 2 target in terms of red zone utility. That's where even though he took a step back when Jameson Williams became a full-time player, I still think he's going to dominate the target share in the red zone behind Amon-Ra. It just so happens that Jameson Williams can score from anywhere. So that's why I lean LaPorta, but it wouldn't surprise me in any way, shape, or form if Harold Fannin goes over 1,000 yards this year and is the number one target in that offense.
It's wild because with LaPorta, people forget he was tight end 1 his rookie season, and he had 120 targets, had 10 touchdowns. Of course, we've seen the touchdowns go 10, 7, 3. Granted, he played 9 games last year. And then we've gone targets 120 down to 83. So even if you throw out last season where LaPorta had 49 targets, it trended significantly down. So if we can get carved out back up in that 110 to 120, maybe even 130 target range, we're not asking for anything crazy. It would be phenomenal for Sam LaPorta. And then with Harold Fannin Jr., Chev, I kind of wish Shedeur Sanders would get run out for Fannin. I'm going to venture to guess that early season, if it's going to be Deshaun Watson, who was just named starter, I'm going to put a little theory out there that I think you're going to be able to buy low in season, because this is redraft, on Harold Fannin Jr., because you're not going to get peppered with targets like you did last year. And then you're going to end up getting Shedeur, who will show up at some point. Like there ain't no way from week 1 through 18 you're going to get Deshaun Watson to start all those games. I just don't think that's going to happen. Shedeur would stand to get in there at some point. So I think you have a preemptive buy low in Harold Fannin Jr. You don't always want to do this, but why not just draft, let other people take Harold Fannin Jr., and if you believe it enough, that path, and you can kind of see it coming, let a couple weeks struggle and then go acquire, because Shedeur Sanders is going to be around, and then you've got injected life into your team with somebody like Harold Fannin Jr. So that's just like a little move that I would preemptively think about, which you don't always get to do in all formats. Some people have a tighter hold in something like Dynasty, where in redraft they're like, hey, I've only got a couple weeks, I got to go win. So I like what you said about that. And then Kyle Pitts, I think he's going to hit with Michael Penix. What would you say to Michael Penix being the guaranteed starting quarterback? Would you be more inclined to click Pitts over LaPorta or Fannin in that instance?
No, it wasn't great with Kyle Pitts and Michael Penix last year. The Pitts to Penix connection just wasn't hitting the way that we wanted it to. Now, Penix understands and knows that do-rag's not wrapped too tight to throw the ball to Drake London as much as humanly possible. But for some reason, it's just not been great for Kyle Pitts with Michael Penix, Captain Do-Rag, at the helm. So maybe they get that figured out this year. Kevin Stefanski's been really good for tight ends. Again, he was the offensive coordinator or the play caller for the Browns last year with the Harold Fannin breakout. Not David Njoku got a career high in the pace, targets per game under one Kevin Stefanski. So there is hope. It's just too much of a wild card bet for me. And if you remember, the breakout game during the fantasy playoffs happened with Kirk Cousins at the helm, not Michael Penix, Captain Do-Rag.
You are correct, because I think it was like a 45 burger against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes, sir.
And Kyle Pitts and Ray Davis, their glitch is they're great at football, but the glitch is Ray Davis can only play well against the Jets, and then Kyle Pitts can only go off against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, it seems. If you look at the splits in the history, it's insane. It reminds me of that running back for the Eagles who always scored a touchdown against.
Oh, yeah. Boston
Scott.
Yes.
Yeah, that's like, hey, this is the only thing you could do, but it happens every damn time against that team. Yeah. It's the Boston Scots.
If I had $1 for every time that happened, I'd have like $6, which is weird because that's a weird thing to get $6 on.
Oh, yeah. But anyway. And then speaking of getting $6 and maybe more dollars, maybe like $69, Tucker Kraft and Colston Loveland starting to get real nice. Tight end 4, Colston Loveland, Tucker Kraft, tight end 5, Chev. I have it, Loveland 4, Kraft 5. I feel like I'm putting respect on the cheesehead. Now, look, I know you haven't been able to have license to talk about Tucker Kraft, but this is your floor right now. You talk about some Tucker Kraft.
Oh, you want
tell me who you're in on.
Is it? Can I go? Can I go?
Safe. Yes.
All right. Okay. All right. So the tight end 1 in points per game before the injury last year comes back. They vacate targets from Romeo Doubs and Samori Toure, and they trade Dontavian Wicks. That Samori Toure thing's a joke, by the way, guys. But they trade Dontavian Wicks to the Eagles. Him and his Megan Fox thumbs are out of there. Now they're going to be running out there with Matthew Golden. They're going to be using a ton of 12 personnel. Last year, going into the offseason, my breadcrumb of hope that I held on to was that Matt LaFleur realized that Tucker Kraft is an ultimate difference maker for their team, and they featured him as such. And they didn't even feature him. This is on 5.3 targets a game. He was giving you tight end 1 overall numbers. He blew away the field in terms of yards after the catch per reception with double-digit yards after the catch per reception, 11 yards after the catch per reception. It's unreal. Now he's off the pup. He's fully practicing. We're going to get the best version of Tucker Kraft while it's bag season, by the way. So I have Tucker Kraft at tight end 4. I have Loveland at tight end 5. I've got it flip-flopped a little bit just because we know exactly how that offense is going to function. Now, I know that there's going to be some gentlemen and ladies that probably get up in arms a little bit about this whole seeming hatred of Colston Loveland because of the fact that I don't have him tight end 3. But I've already seen the outcome happen with Colston with Tucker Kraft. If for some reason this goes to hell in a handbasket and Colston Loveland doesn't return on the tight end 3 that everybody's so hell bent on selecting him, then I can go grab Tucker Kraft a few rounds later. He's my tight end 4. Colston Loveland's my tight end 5. You can go argue with a wall. This is how I have it. I'll accept no further questions at this time. The floor is yours, sir.
Well, this is very much like the Spider-Man meme. All the stats that I was talking about, Brenton Strange, where I said, hey, he's a lighter, lesser version, stat-wise, of somebody like Loveland and Tucker Kraft. So to me, for them to be 4 and 5 or flip-flop, 5 and 4, depending on how you want to flip them, I think is all well within reason. We've talked about the granular element of when we get this high. Well, yeah, shifting Colston Loveland to 5, it'd be one thing if you were just, hey, Colston Loveland, you're tight end 10. You know, it'd be like that guy who was saying Cole Payton was better than Jalen Hurts. Like, no, not at all, man. We are not on that. So, yeah, you're not disrespectful by keeping them in an area in a park. But I think it's actually more disrespectful to the people who are chirping about Colston Loveland. It's more disrespectful to not think of Tucker Kraft in this light. And I think people are having a short memory, Chev, but for the fact that he's been injured. And I think that's all about to change. Now, speaking of injury, for me, somebody who's going to benefit next year, and my call is my hot take. You know, hey, you got to have a hot take. A bring home the bacon player for me is Tyler Warren. And I'm going to say, because injury really riddled the Colts last year with Daniel Jones, and they just went downhill after week 10. We re-roll. Everything's going to be right again in this universe for the Colts. And it's setting up with no Alec Pierce to start the season. Tyler Warren is going to outscore Brock Bowers. Okay. I have Tyler Warren tight end 3. Brock Bowers is 1. I'm going to rank it correctly. But what I'm going to predict is Tyler Warren he's going to outscore Brock Bowers. And if Bowers is the number 1, well, maybe he'll be 2, and then Warren will be number 1. But you're getting my drift. It's going to be a top 3, top 2, 1A, 1B situation for Tyler Warren. We're going to see him hit in a big way this year. First 10 weeks last year, 3rd in targets with 64, 3rd in receptions with 50, 1st in yards, 617, 1st in yak. All the stats are there that favor Tyler Warren's production. And then across the season, you can extrapolate. I don't see why he doesn't live in that 1, 2, and 3 territory where he's up amongst. You know, if you want to put Colston Loveland up there, sure, fine, fair, well and good. But Tyler Warren, I think, needs to be up there with McBride and Bowers. It's just kind of funny how when I say Tyler Warren, who people in consensus will have tight end 4 in Dynasty, and I'm like, hey, I think he's going to venture to outscore Brock Bowers. People are like, oh, well, I don't know about that, which is fine, but I just don't see the gumption behind it where it's that crazy. So that's my hot take. I understand it's hot because Brock Bowers is a baller. I've got him in different places. This isn't a situation where I've got one more than the other. I'm excited about Brock Bowers. Please, Brock Bowers, rookie Brock Bowers, please come back to us. But yeah, I'm fully excited on board. Tyler Warren, floor is yours. What do you make of Tyler Warren?
I mean, I have him as a tight end 3 as well. There's a path to him having a 25 to 27% target share that just rests in the fact that Josh Downs can't stay healthy. They moved on from Michael Pittman They moved on, they traded Adonai Mitchell, and now there's a huge chasm of, hey, who's going to catch the football for this team? So that's where we land with Tyler Warren. I think that there's a safer, more succinct target floor for this. So yeah, that's where I land. I don't have any issues with this whatsoever. It is a little spicy that he's going to outscore Brock Bowers, but I mean, that's the whole point, man. You got to call a shot. You got to call your shot somewhere.
And if you can get him a little bit later, kind of what you're talking about with Kraft to Loveland, you can get some rounds difference. I think there's value to be had, and maybe you take Drake London, maybe you take Malik Neighbors, and then get Warren.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's just, from a roster construction perspective, it just makes too much sense to me.
Now, Chev, this is easy, simple, nice. This season, do you want Brock Bowers or Trey McBride? They're 1 and 2 for just about everybody, but if you got to pick one, who are you going to pick?
I'm going to pick Brock Bowers. It's the safest thing to do. He caught 7 touchdowns in 12 games. He's going to be the number 1 target in that offense without question. It's devoid of weapons outside of Ashton Genty as pass catchers. You could bet on Malik Benson. You could bet on Jalen Naylor. I'm not doing that. I'm just going to go and secure Brock Bowers and call it a day.
I like where your head's at. I'm there with you on Brock Bowers because if Tyler Warren's not the tight end 1 overall, it's probably going to be Brock Bowers. And we saw what he could do as a rookie. And I see a little bit bearish because we talked about on one of our redraft shows, I think it was with the running backs, Chev, Jeremiah Love, Trey McBride in those top 3 rounds. Ain't nothing wrong, but something ain't right, because with the Vegas point totals being top 5 lowest in the NFL, depending on where you shop and look, how does Love and McBride, do they both hit? And then you extrapolate that to ADP for fantasy value. I just think there's so much set up for somebody like Brock Bowers. So that's our show. Those are our top 20. Please tell us, like, subscribe, share, comment. Let us know what we got wrong. What's too spicy? What's too bearish? Who are your top 5? Give us a couple of your tight ends in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
There's ball watchers, ball knowers. We'll see you in the next episode.